How does a game played by nobodies in a has-been town on a field that won't even exist soon, where the winner doesn't matter at all, become one of the sweetest, weirdest, and in a ways most accurate movies about baseball ever made? And although it takes place in the 90s, a fascinating commentary on life in 2025.
I can't wait to answer that multi-part question. The movie is called Eephus. This podcast is called All Those Moments. I'm Benji Wade.
And I'm Luke Baumgarten.
All those moments will be lost in time, like tears in rain.
All Those Moments is a podcast that connects social, political, or cultural moments with moments from our favorite movies and television shows. Luke, did you grow up playing baseball, watching baseball? What did you do?
Girl, I grew up playing baseball. You're looking at a 3-time Riverside Youth Sports All-Star catcher. I was a catcher.
You said something about being that functionally fitting your personality because you're an ADD person.
Yeah, I could have been diagnosed just by how much I didn't like baseball until I started playing catcher. Yep.
I had an appreciation of that position watching baseball growing up. And I loved Pudge Rodriguez and I loved Mike Piazza, but I never in a million years would have imagined myself liking playing that position because I think I'm the opposite. The idea of just sitting behind home plate for that many innings just would sound like torture.
What about you though?
So it is the one sport that I never played growing up. I played probably everything except baseball. I did break my hand playing softball once. I don't know if that counts. Slow pitch softball.
Totally.
I was obsessed with the National League though growing up. My dad was a Cardinals fan. I was born in Georgia. So I thought growing up in Alaska, I'll just pick a team that I want to cheer for. I don't want to cheer for the same team as my dad. And at that time, the Braves were horrible. It was when they had a guy named Dale Murphy. This is I
know that name. Yeah.
Mid to late 80s. It was before they signed all those incredible pitchers. The thing about baseball that I've always been obsessed with that I think Eephus has so much to say about is all the intricacies, the routines, the small details.
Yeah.
I can still remember being 10 years old in the 86 World Series watching the Mets beat the Red Sox. And of course, that has some relevance to this movie, Eephus, that we're going to talk about. The Curse of the Red Sox has a role to play. But even players like Len Dykstra, before he became a complete psychopath, the way he chewed sunflower seeds, or the way that Eric Davis for the Cincinnati Reds waggled his bat in this kind of unusual way.
Oh yeah, there's so much weird sort of superstition and it just ticks kind of that baseball players have.
You're talking about Gary Sheffield had that really weird thing where he would just point the bat toward the pitcher, which I always thought must have been.
Remember, dude, Sheffield had the weirdest swing, and you remember that stuff.
You remember it, and you also must have imagine being a pitcher. I think I'd be intimidating if this this dude is just pointing his bat at me before he takes a big rip. Anyway, let's talk about Eephus. I am currently obsessed with this movie. I am embarrassed to say that I sat down not even knowing what it was about. I thought it was going to be a documentary about old dudes cosplaying their favorite vintage baseball players. It looked like the Society for Creative Anachronisms.
Like LARPers.
Yeah, it looked like baseball LARPers because of by the way, the really cool art that they used to promote the movie. I did not think it was going to be scripted narrative. So Luke, tell me why you wanted to watch Eephus down at the Magic Lantern.
It's kind of the same reason I wanted to do this whole podcast, not just this episode, the whole thing. I really realized in the last year how much, I think I mentioned this last episode, I miss the culture of third spaces we used to have. Bars, coffee shops, movie theaters, parks, and municipal ball fields definitely play into this. It's like the way individual communities choose to encourage people to gather. Those are in some ways the first third spaces. Experiences change when you experience them with other people. Right?
Oh my God, do they ever?
It's the most obvious statement in the world, but I personally had not really meditated on that in a really long time. And I'd gotten into this rut I think I talked about last week. I love watching movies. I also love watching TV. I just binged a bunch last night, working my way through the last season of The Bear. You know what my absolute favorite thing in the world is though? Watching a movie and then talking about it with other people right afterwards.
Immediately after.
I am so annoyed if I go with a group of people and they have to run off right afterwards. I want to sit. I don't even have my thoughts formed at this point. My friends don't necessarily have their thoughts formed at this point. We're just
it's physical.
Throwing out.
It's almost physical. You have your physical response, the things that get past your ability to even discern with intellect. One of my core memories is watching Braveheart. And then the guy that my sister was dating at the time was that way. He was like, let's go to a coffee shop. And we went to a coffee shop. I swear to God, we talked about Braveheart for 2 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you have an opportunity to go somewhere else, you're not just doing it in the in the foyer afterwards. You can do that. And it's amazing how much time passes, how much joy there is in that. I like forming my thoughts sort of in reaction to other people's thoughts. It helps me check my own sort of first impulses. Yeah. And in that way, it's kind of like baseball too. It's a deeply personal team sport at its best for me. And so you can do it alone. You can watch a movie on your couch. You can go to batting cages and let the robot toss you some balls, but it is not the same experience. It's not nearly as much fun. And it sucks to say, but this culture of solitude that we're talking about is winning in America. The disappearance of these opportunities to connect in real life is having real impacts on our society. And that's one of the main things that this whole project and why we're always name checking our local theater. Because like we want to maybe rebuild a culture of moviegoing.
The idea for this podcast existed, but the idea of watching Eephus and talking about it on this podcast had not even been in consideration. Again, I didn't even know the plot of it. I had no idea what it was even about. So who did you invite down to watch the movie with us at the Magic Lantern?
So this is the thing. I learned about this movie from a podcast I've listened to for almost a decade called Chapo Trap House. The dudes who do that podcast helped produce the film. And I know you've listened to that podcast, but I don't think a lot of people in my day-to-day life are gray wolves. And it's a micro budget film. I don't even think this film has a rating. Like I had kind of forgotten this existed. And then my baseball dork friends, some friends from my like obligatory college basketball group chats, people I know from community organizing, there were a lot of different people talking about this film. And a handful of them happened to be middle-aged dudes still playing baseball with other middle-aged dudes, very much like the two teams in this movie. One of which is the hat you're wearing, Benji. These are the South Hill Turkeys.
Shout out South Hill Turkeys. Let's go.
If we're treating neighborhoods like we treat cities in, Major League Baseball, like this would be our home team. These are friends of ours.
And they play in the Inland Northwest Men's Baseball League alongside the other 45 plus teams, 45 age plus teams, Rangers, Freedom, Pirates, and Turkeys.
So basically the idea was these dudes kind of wanted to watch the movie together. And so I had this thought, like, rather than watching it alone or even getting together in a house and doing a watch party, why not get our friends down at the Magic Lantern to see if they would host a closed screening and then just try to do that thing that I love doing so much, spend 30 minutes talking about it right afterwards and then go home.
Luke, before we get into the deep dive about all of our thoughts on this movie and all the moments from this movie, can you walk me through the kind of A plot of it?
It's going to take us 1 minute. 2 beer league baseball teams, the River Dogs in blue and in red. Do they even have a name? The sponsored by Adler's Paints, the Adler's Painters. We don't even learn the name of this other team other than who sponsors them on the front of the jersey. Gather for one final game at Soldiers Field, not the Soldiers Field in Chicago, the random Soldiers Field that like every small town is named Soldiers Field because of people who returned from either World War I or World War II. It's just a small nondescript New England town, and they're playing the last game on this field. It takes place in the 90s, so there's no cell phones. There's a lot of AM radio, or what I assume maybe FM radio. There's a lot of radio, and through radio, we learned this isn't just their last game of the season. It's the last ever game on this field. This field is going to get bulldozed. It's going to become a middle school. And I do think actually making it a middle school specifically is interesting. And one of the many reasons that we might want to talk to the filmmakers at some point, because I was like, middle school, that means there's not going to be a baseball field on it for the high school kids to play at, probably.
Oh, that's a good shout.
Yeah. And so the whole movie is just this one game. We see it almost in real time, day through to dusk. To night. There are some young dudes, but it's mostly people who are our age and older, middle-aged beer league regulars. There's a war veteran. There's an elderly scorekeeper who treats his role with quiet reverence. There are some stoner kids who come out, literally like appear out of nowhere, don't even know the rules of baseball, but they decide to just hang out and make fun of these guys. There's basically zero stakes to the game itself. Like I already said, the outcome could not be less important. The stakes are all about the loss of this field, the loss of the activities that take place on it, and the way that the act of gathering, even, by happenstance, like those stoner kids, creates these weird pockets of community that are ephemeral in some ways, but also really important to like the way people gather in space together.
The other thing that I think there is mostly the older dudes that are featured as kind of like the prominent, I guess, cast members or players on the teams. But there is this intergenerational thing where there are a couple of young studs on the team too. And at one point, one of the characters is like mourning the fact that, oh, that guy's got so much capability, but this is it. And he doesn't want to drive 2 towns over to the other baseball league, the other place where they can continue playing.
Well, there's one guy who might be playing college ball, but it kind of sounds like he might be playing like community college ball.
Yeah. So the movie's directed by Carson Lund. Am I good to do this now?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Written by Carson Lund, Michael Basta, and Nate Fisher. It was shot by cinematographer Greg Tango, edited by Carson Lund. You notice Carson did a lot. He had triple duty on this.
Yeah, it's those micro budgets. Yeah.
Exactly. So did his brother Eric, who did production design, art director. He probably handled props. He probably was.
Eric killed it.
Carson Lund grew up in New Hampshire, studied filmmaking at Emerson College. He writes for Slant Magazine, and he is from. I tried not to do too much research on Carson Lund or even the film collective that he's part of called Omnes Films, because I really wanted to keep my perspectives on the movie fresh and not get influenced and biased by its authors. But he writes for Slant Magazine. I did see that the last article that he had written for Slant was his glowing review of the release of Andrei Tarkovsky's The Sacrifice, which was released on 4K Ultra HD. And if you don't know, there is a relationship between a film like Eephus and Tarkovsky. Tarkovsky, of course, the Goliath of Soviet cinema, one of the filmmakers who inspired certainly what's called the slow cinema movement. I'm going to admit this is recent information to me. In all of my travels of being a person who loves films and loves filmmaking, I don't really get into generic definitions a lot. I have the same perspective toward music. You know, is it electro house or is it Detroit house? Like all that kind of stuff.
It's all EDM to me, baby.
It's all EDM to Luke, apparently. I never really do that, but Tarkovsky is definitely a part of like what inspired people that are interested in the slow cinema movement. Tarkovsky is The Mirror, a movie that came out the year that I was born. Eephus could definitely be labeled as slow cinema and a movement that's associated with themes of memory, loss, passage of time, decay. Lund himself has said that he wanted to make his own version of the Taiwanese movie called Goodbye Dragon Inn, which is a movie about a Taiwanese movie theater that's going to have its closing. And the last movie that it plays is called Dragon Inn. And then I did see a quote from Carson Lund, and I thought, this is way too much synchronicity. He said, baseball is dying, cinema is dying. Let's do it on a baseball field and make an end of baseball movie. So take all that as backdrop for Omnes Films, which is a collective of filmmakers of which Carson Lund is a part. Omnes is Latin for all the people or everybody. And here is their mission statement, Luke, which I want to take your temperature on. Our mission is to fill a void in modern cinema. Our films are passionate, ambitious works made by friends that favor atmosphere over plot and study the many forms of cultural decay in the 21st century. Whatever the subject or genre, we seek projects that are original in conception and feel like they've never been made before.
Whenever I think about atmosphere, and I do think about it frequently in film, I'm mostly thinking about the set and whatever. Atmosphere is also the people who end up in frame or who end up on the baseball field in real life. Like atmosphere is created not just by the built environment, but by the people who choose to then hang out there. Like that's the more important part, probably. And I didn't really think about it in that way. Like people gravitate to spaces for specific things, but it's the people that make the atmosphere.
It's like they created this incredible setting. Yeah. They had a really finely tuned script. And when you combine those two things, I think you end up with a movie that's as good. If it's not obvious to our listeners and viewers by now, we're super into this movie.
I mean, it feels totally true to me that this would fit into like a slow cinema movement. This is not a slow paced film. Nothing really happens, but it's constantly, there's cuts, there's so much dialogue. We're jumping around. You actually took the time to learn the names of some of the characters. It feels like there's 35 characters in this movie, and we only learned the names of like 7 of them. Yeah. But I still came away feeling like certain people, I knew something about their lives. These are well fleshed out characters. It's really funny. Yeah. Really funny.
Let's talk about the structure of the moments. So that's how we're going to do this podcast. And we're going to talk about the moments in a fairly unique way on this particular episode. Yeah. So tell me how we're going to do the movie moments.
This is only our second episode. We're still experimenting. What we thought was I actually recorded with our little wireless mics, shout out DJI, basically recorded the conversation. And so we're going to kind of tee up the moments we're going to talk about with little snippets from the crowd that was there. And so the first moment was when we got up, just that, like you were saying, like, I'm not thinking about the deeper cinematic aspects of this movie. The credits have just rolled. The Tom Waits song has just ended. We get up and we're like, what did you think? And I heard somebody in the crowd say, before I even had the mic on, say it's like Sandlot for grown-ups.
Man. Any thoughts? I heard somebody say Sandlot for grown-ups.
That's what my daughter said it sounded like before it even started. And it turned out to be wonderfully true.
How does that hit you?
It hits perfectly. I will say that I was probably the wrong age for the movie The Sandlot. The best job of my lifetime was working at Blockbuster Video when I was age 17 to 19, which is when Sandlot came out. In fact, I think the first week I started at Blockbuster Video, Anchorage, Alaska. Okay, shout out. Sandlot was on the shelves.
Yeah.
So it was like, I think fall of 93 is what I want to say. I'll have to check my math on that. But I would say it's Linklater meets Terrence Malick meets Sandlot for grownups if Jim Jarmusch directed it. That's kind of like, if I did not know anything about Carson Lund and his predispositions as a filmmaker, and I had seen this movie, those are the takeaways Sandlot, that I would have had.
Sandlot. Yeah, the romanticism for baseball, the fantasy at like 2 points in life. Because it's actually, as young kids, you have this fantasy about growing up to be adults. This movie is sort of the opposite. You're sort of trying to reclaim the nostalgia you had when your knees didn't ache at the, by the second or third inning, and trying to remember, almost trying to remember the romanticism you had for it as a kid. It's really beautiful in that way.
You mentioned that it is slow cinema, but it never stops. And it's so briskly cut. I think the editing is meant to just keep you constantly propelled toward the next thing.
Yeah.
At any point, I think that Carson Lund and the DP would linger on a shot of some atmosphere, whether it's clouds rolling past or it's this static shot of some a breeze hitting the trees. And one of my favorite characters, I'm just going to get this out of the way right now, that I'm obsessed with. The actor's name's Connor Marks.
Okay.
He plays a character called Cooper. And at one point, the camera it's pretty far away. It's like, wide shot. There's some trees. And this character, Cooper, has a branch. And he's just like winging it around at the tree. It makes almost no sense.
It's almost like he's sword fighting, but he's not. It's like he's just whipping it around. Yeah.
But he's like Don Quixote and he's fighting a tree instead of a windmill. It's really odd. But you'll have a moment like that, but it quickly goes into something else. You're constantly having your attention drawn to something else that's happening in or around the baseball field. And I really appreciate that about
another
it.
guy you liked was Franny. There's this moment where he just starts randomly talking about the shapes of manhole covers.
Dude, this was the first kind of very Jarmusch moment for me, where in the movie theater, I thought about this. So the character Franny, who plays the scorekeeper, he is the most lovable character in the movie. He made me cry when I watched it the second time because I was like, he's, giving the Lou Gehrig speech, and as the last lights of the cars are leaving the baseball field and it's nighttime and then he walks into the woods. We're going to talk about that more later. But that character Franny is talking about the way that their community had been using triangular shaped manhole covers, but they were all being replaced by round ones. And they cut to something else, I think, from the food truck. And then they cut back to Fran, and he's just like, he's not done. He's like still talking about the manhole covers.
The foundry made triangular manholes in the 20s. If you get your hands on one, you could probably command a high bid at an auction. Some people say it reminds them of the recycling symbol. But every year they replace a few more of the circulars. Just another thing to write into the history books.
It's just another thing to write into the history books. And I thought about a scene from Ghost Dog, Way of the Samurai. Yeah, it only took 2 episodes for me to reference a Jarmusch movie, one of my favorites, where the gangsters in the movie that had hired the Forrest Whitaker character.
The samurai, yeah.
Yeah. Another movie that's obsessed with details and has this kind of idiosyncratic dialogue, right? The guy who had hired the Ghost Dog, the Forrest Whitaker character, is saying that he only communicates with pigeons.
Did you say he contacts you through a fucking bird? Did I just hear you say that?
What particular species of bird?
It's a pigeon. Must be like a carrier pigeon or whatever.
Passenger pigeons! Passenger pigeons been extinct since 1914!
Am I fucking dreaming here or what?
Passenger pigeon! That bird's been extinct since 1914. It's a character who's kind of obsessed with history and things going extinct. And I thought of that even when we were watching the movie in the movie theater. It's like, this is very Jim Jarmusch.
So I'm not nearly as steeped in the oeuvre as you are, but I was thinking of a Jim Jarmusch movie throughout this as well, Coffee and Cigarettes, which is a movie similarly that just moves around a cafe, a diner. Bill Murray is sitting at one table, but it's just all these actors sort of playing out scenes from these characters' lives. The RZA from the Wu-Tang Clan is in it. And I think it made me want to go back and rewatch that movie because I haven't watched it probably since I was in college, to try to see like how it captures that same thing, just a slice of life in places that are disappearing now. You know?
RZA, by the way, also has the most scene stealing moment in Ghost Dog Way the Samurai.
That's the only shot I remember from the movie is the shot of him meeting the RZA.
It's a profile shot. It might be a little tracking and they're walking toward each other and he's like walks up. I haven't seen the movie in a long time. He's like, Ghost Dog.
Ghost Dog, power equality.
I always see everything, my brother.
And they hug and they dap each other up in this very specific way. And I know. And then RZA does the insanely dope soundtrack, by the way. Yeah. All right, Luke, let's talk about the next movie moment from Eephus.
So this one came from my buddy Matt Goldblum, who's one of the turkeys, and actually had he had the whole fit on. He was wearing a turkey shirt. He was wearing the turkey's hat. He had a nice little jean jacket on top. He actually kind of looked like he walked out of the 90s. In his thought, which was really, really funny and kind of fits with the self-deprecating nature of the movie.
I understand the artistic choice at the end, the anticlimactic walk-off based on balls, but I'm going to be honest with you, that would have been the most exciting moment of the Turkeys season last year. So, no, it was good. It was good. I just liked that it was like, like there's not many spaces where a bunch of dudes can hang out.
Yeah.
And those are kind of lost spaces these days. So it's kind of cool.
And what I loved about that quote was just, it's so true. Like this is not good baseball we're watching on screen. And yet somehow it would have been like the high point of our friend's career. Because at this age in our life, I don't think anybody thinks we're playing good baseball when you're in middle age,
Yeah. And I remember playing the last time I played adult rec co-ed soccer. When I shinned a goal in, I felt
just ecstatic.
Oh, I felt like Maradona at the time. I was like, that was so great. And later on, of course, then I feel embarrassed. I'm like, yeah, man, I don't have it anymore.
No, man,
I hurt everywhere right now. All right, Luke, let's talk about the next moment from Eephus.
It feels like the guy, like the scorekeeper, would show up because it's a ritual and it's a place to show up and be a part of something.
Yeah.
And so I think there are fewer spaces like that.
Right.
Like there's less Elks Club, Lions Club, church, people don't do as much. That's what felt like part of the sadness for me, is like baseball is a ritual and it's a seasonal thing that follows the plants and the weather.
Yeah.
It's like it was getting cold, time's up, and so that felt like part of the sadness.
I felt like it was such a cool metaphor for how baseball is something that, whether it's baseball or not, we hold on to things, and when they finally are taken from us, that it's lovely and it's heartbreaking, and I didn't know how to feel at the end.
Yeah.
I think I was sad but it just seemed like baseball was this sort of metaphor that life is happening all around and baseball's just always there.
Yeah.
So, Luke, when you hear that, how does the banter within the movie become a commentary on the banter that we experienced afterward, chatting with all the South Hill Turkeys and our friends, with a group of adult league male baseball players in their 40s who are on the verge of weeping, thinking about what baseball has meant to their life?
There really was. People were emotional at the end of this too. Not only we weren't just thinking how funny it was and how silly we all are, sort of caring about this stuff at a certain phase of life. People were emotional for it. And so what I've been thinking about with the third spaces thing is there's a sociologist from the 90s who actually, here's a name check of a recent documentary sort of reinforcing his work, but it's this dude named Robert Putnam who wrote a book. The book's called Bowling Alone. The idea is there at that point in the 90s, I'm sure this isn't true anymore, but at that point in the 90s, there were more people bowling than ever and fewer bowling leagues than ever. And he uses it to sort of express a theory that the civic decay that we were experiencing in the 90s, so fast forward and see how much worse it is now, was coming from the disappearance of these public spaces like Elks Clubs and, the Shriners and the Masons and also just, bowling leagues and baseball leagues. And so there's a movie on Netflix that's I think it's a 110-minute documentary, basically just updating Putnam, and Putnam's in the film. It's called Join or Die. Just a really nice gloss of his theories of this, and then kind of how that's become supercharged in the social media era and, in the world we're all living in.
There's a moment, I think the movie is aware of this context of the loss of third spaces and the fact that they're losing their baseball field. Yeah. One of the characters says to another character at some point something about what they could do after the baseball field is gone.
I live near Leda Lanes.
Yeah, you can always go bowling.
That's something.
Always.
Our audience really, really connected to this because like part of what Putnam's thesis is he's talking about the decay of civic life, but he's not talking about the loss of political spaces. He's not like worried about the Democratic or the Republican Party going away. He's worried about bowling leagues going away. And I think that's when we gather for a purpose, right? And sometimes our relationships to people are completely built around that purpose. And so like, why would a bunch of dudes who have only ever gathered to play baseball want to start bowling together or even go grab a beer afterwards or, replace that with, grabbing a beer at some point? They're just not interested.
Well, and the movie is preoccupied with the idea that people still have opportunity to get together for things that have absolutely nothing to do with politics. Even though,
and then incidentally, maybe that's how you connect with people who are across the aisle from you in a way that I'm sorry, regardless of how bipartisan you try to be with your social media algorithm, you're going to start seeing stuff that like sort of funnels you into one camp or another, Yeah.
And the movie does, after the scene where they talk about the bowling, there's another scene at the very, very end where it's another kind of a invitation from one of the players who's saying to one of his teammates, maybe we'll get together over the winter at a bar.
Hey, maybe we do a meetup over the winter at a bar. You have everyone's contacts. Could be worth reaching out.
Yeah, I'll think on it.
Another piece that I think you've had a lot to talk about, but I think we both experienced is you can have an entire conversation and still track everything that's happening in the game. And there are very few games, maybe golf. You can watch this game and understand everything that happens and still have a completely tangential conversation with your friends, which is one of the reasons it feels like a pastime in addition to being a game. Yeah.
We made an incidental reference to this dynamic when we did the first podcast, which was about a soccer movie called The Damned United,
right,
where it was like basketball. Yes, there are timeouts, but the moment that the ball's back in play, it's very difficult if you really care about what's happening on the court.
Way too fast paced.
With soccer, I made this observation when we did the screening. It's, I think, impossible because the clock keeps going. So anybody who knows me, and soccer is my favorite sport, when I go watch our local professional teams play, I am the worst conversationalist. You don't want to try to connect with me unless you're there to respond emotionally. I'm not even talking intellectually. I'm not there to talk about tactics and formation and the shape of the team. I'm there to be like, are they going to win or lose? Because everything always feels like it's the highest possible stakes.
Yep.
Baseball has so much punctuation in it. And a lot of that punctuation are these long ellipses between moments. So I also got the sense from Carson, Lund and these filmmakers that they weren't insufferable about the way that they built this production. They weren't worrying about every take and killing the joy when we talked about the spontaneity of all the characters. And yes, the dialogue was very specific, but I just had this detection that everybody that was part of the cast was really enjoying themselves.
Whether it was improv or not, it had the vibe of those really smart movies that are partially scripted and partially improv, where it's like, let me just embody this character. And again, if there's like 30 characters, this might be a character that's built completely in an actor's head based on very few lines in the script, I would imagine. And so you just get to vibe. And so I don't know how improvised the script was, but it just felt like there were all these, we were just getting these weird personalities that had these quirks that felt really special. Like everybody really put time and thought into it.
And everybody felt like the way that the performances came across, that they were encouraged to play around and to make weird choices that ended up making the cut. It's like, it's a movie that we're going to talk about our favorite baseball movies to end this podcast, but it doesn't have like the purity of Field of Dreams and all of that like hopeful nostalgia that Field of Dreams was playing with. And it doesn't have all the specificity and the science of Moneyball, but it has this irreverence and a ton of crass dick jokes and humor that, very much, I don't know if your childhood was anything like mine, but it reminds me of being a teenager and probably even into my 20s and 30s, if I'm being totally honest. So many of the jokes don't land. And it feels completely intentional because when you're busting chops, you're going to take risks. You're going to try to say something like up the stakes and eventually you're going to land one. Kind of reminded me of the David Brent character from The Office. Eventually he tells a funny joke. There's a couple scenes where there are some jokes, one in particular that doesn't land. And he's one of my favorite characters. Do you remember the character Bobby? I think he's the owner of Adler's paint.
Okay, yeah.
Early on, he tells a story about hurting his back, fixing his printer, and it plays so odd. It's the first moment where I'm just kind of like, that dude is going through some shit, you know?
Hey, fresh, hot, and ready. Sounds like your girlfriend, Kev.
Wait for yours.
I'm sorry, Kev. You know I'm just screwing around.
Just rude, Bobby. That's just rude.
There's always like a dude in the group who like misunderstands how crass you're trying to be, or like,
Totally.
like, oh yeah, crass is one thing, but misogyny is like not cool with you know, the group that he's trying to get in with. Like, there's always the
a casual racist joke, you know?
Yeah,
like, wow, Jesus.
Like, wow, yeah.
We have to talk about the Eephus pitch.
We do. Although it's like, it is in some ways the perfect metaphor for the movie. It's actually kind of the pitch itself is kind of a good metaphor for baseball, but like, they actually take the time to explain it in the movie, so we can just let the movie itself explain what the pitch is.
The Eephus pitch is a type of curveball that is pitched so unnaturally slow that it confuses the batter. He swings too early or too late. You lob it so it looks like a curveball, but you give it no power. Double if he can leg this out.
I wish I was sitting down too.
The thing about this moment that I really enjoy is it's probably, I don't know if you want to call it a rule, but it's like something that you don't often do, where you call out the metaphor. There's a character in the movie.
I like that. It's kind of like baseball. I'm looking around for something to happen. Poof, game's over.
Well, and it's kind of like if you would have ended Moneyball by saying, "That's how you play Moneyball," right?
Yeah,
like that is the most
exactly
tacky way to name a film.
It is very ba-dum-dum kind of a moment. And I'm like, but again, I just think that character, he feels like he's embodying the guy who's going to say the quiet part loud of like,
there's always the cornball who like sort of has exactly has to say that.
I got to be the smart guy or the aloof. I'm not reading the moment. Like Derek's kind of like, yeah, duh. I just think I spelled out how an Eephus is like baseball, and you just got to come out and say it's kind of like baseball. Yeah, exactly. That actor was in a local TV show called Z Nation, and I am almost positive.
Local meaning filmed in Spokane.
Filmed in Spokane, Washington. Yep. I'm almost positive that I have seen that actor Connor Marks in Spokane before. He's way too memorable.
Well, and that filmed in our office below fellow co-working.
Yeah, right? I worked at the production company North by Northwest, who was the production company involved in that. So I'm pretty sure I've seen Connor Marks around. He has a very memorable face.
Yep.
Luke, can you give me a description of what happened in the screening that I did not appreciate at the time, but now I'm like, oh my God.
One of the people who's one of the actual former baseball players, Bill Spaceman Lee, used to throw a version of the Eephus called the Leephus after Bill Lee. Bill Spaceman Lee's son lives in Spokane and plays for the Rapids. We actually tried to get him to come to the screening. He doesn't know this either. We're like, dude, could we get him? But nobody had his contact information. So we try to get the son to come because he lives here.
Yeah,
right?
I know.
Like, why not come?
And he's listed on the Inland Northwest Men's Baseball League as like their web media person because he's like a designer and a photographer.
Oh,
I added him on Facebook. I'm trying to get a hold of this guy because it seems like way too, again, synchronicity.
Yeah.
So it's at this point that Bill Spaceman Lee just kind of appears out of nowhere, and he's clearly like trying to get the baseball players in the movie to invite him to play, right?
Yeah.
So a quick history about Bill Spaceman Lee. Lee did play professional baseball for a long time. He had a pretty damn good career for the Red Sox. He finished his career with a 3.62 ERA and was named to an American League All-Star team in 1973. And he did have a moment in the 1975 World Series where he hung one of his Leephus pitches to the Cincinnati Reds' Tony Perez.
There's his blooper pitch. There it is. A high drive. He was waiting for that one. That one is gone over everything. Perez timed that blooper pitch and slammed it over the screen out in the Lansdowne Street. And now we have another one-run ball game in this World Series.
They lost both of the games that he started in the 1975 World Series. However, he did leave both those games with a lead. Just want to point that out. And it reminded me a lot of like the New England baseball kind of history and lore.
The curse of the Red Sox and stuff.
Yeah, it was very much in play in this movie. So I couldn't help but compare that to the history. I was even when we were watching the movie, I admittedly had never really heard of an Eephus. I don't think that was something I
hadn't either.
I knew knuckleballers, of course.
Yeah, right.
And a very famous knuckleballer who played for the Red Sox, Tim Wakefield. Wakefield hung a knuckleball that Aaron Boone hit into the moon in the 2003 American League Championship Series, even though Red Sox came back to win 2 World Series after that. So Wakefield won 2 World Series before he died from cancer in 2023. Bill Spaceman Lee went on to pitch in a huge assortment of leagues. And even when he was 63 years old. He pitched 5 1/3 innings for the Brockton Rocks in 2010, earned a win, making him the oldest pitcher to ever appear in or win a professional baseball game.
That's wild.
And he has this great moment where he's trying to convince these players to let him take a shot at it, even though at the time of filming, he was like in his early 70s.
Yeah.
Well, when I was younger, I didn't throw that hard. Now I'm older, I don't throw much harder. But I got good shit. I'll get you 3 outs.
So we've already hinted at the next moment, but the crowd picked up on this too. You know, so many of those awesome movies we love, like Goonies and stuff from the 80s and 90s, it was about kids or this ragtag group of people trying to stop kind of encroaching modernity, usually in this sense of like, oh, they're going to pave this over and build a mall or something. Or it's like, think of the developers from the Goonies, like everybody, the neighborhood's going to go away entirely because we have to go find the rich stuff in order to stop all of our houses from being foreclosed on. This is not that. This is the town building a new school for the betterment of everyone, a public school, you know. Our crowd caught on to that. And I thought it's a really important part of the film. It's like, this is just time. It's not, there's no bad guys in this movie. It's just the passage of time changing, like part of community is you get really used to it and you don't want it to go away, even if the change is good. But Benji, for you, it brought up a very specific filmmaker that I want you to talk about because he's really important to you. And I had literally never heard of this man before.
Yeah. It's real film nerd shit. I will admit that the first 10 minutes of sitting down to watch the movie, as I mentioned, I didn't realize it was scripted narrative. But the first credit that just made me go, I didn't recognize any of the names, but I see narrated by Frederick Wiseman. And I'm thinking to myself immediately, it must be just a super random coincidence. There's no way that this is the Frederick Wiseman. But then I'm listening to the narration and it's like, okay, that sounds like a really old guy.
Yeah.
Turns out it is the Frederick Wiseman.
So why did you put the way people do the Ohio State University in front of Frederick Wiseman, a man I had never heard of before this film?
Okay, so to get a sense of Wiseman's importance, not just to this movie, but like the entire history of movies, I'm going to give you a really quick journey that'll go from the French New Wave to Wiseman in the United States in just a few sentences.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the 1960s. A bunch of French filmmakers are running around with these lightweight cameras that are made by a company called Eclair. You're thinking Truffaut, Godard, the New Wave movement, a filmmaker named Jean Rouch within the cinema verite nonfiction film movement. And it inspired a lot of American filmmakers, including Frederick Wiseman. He picked up a 16 millimeter version of the Eclair camera. All the sync sound recording equipment got much lighter. So what happened was all these guys were suddenly, you weren't locked into studio production. You could actually go
out in real life and make a documentary.
Yep. 35 millimeter cameras, 16 millimeter cameras. Of course, we know that the Vietnam War was televised. And he ends up making a bunch of what are called in the US direct cinema. To be clear, Wiseman didn't really like either one of those terms. He didn't want to be associated with cinema verite or direct cinema.
Yeah.
He called his films reality fictions, effectively fly on the wall, sync sound. No, at this point, nonfiction documentary films were all voice of God. It would be, the interviewer.
Here's the lion on the savannah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Omnes Films are interested in the many forms of cultural decay of the 21st century, while Wiseman and the Maisel brothers are also heavily associated with this movement. Wiseman himself was really preoccupied with the bureaucratic institutions, both the banality and complexity of American life as depicted in these institutions. Speaking of institutions, the first movie that he ever made was called Titicut Follies. It was about a Massachusetts hospital for the criminally insane. And then he followed that up a year later with High School, which was about a public high school in Philadelphia. And he also, I found out, is 95 years old and made a documentary in 2020 at age 90 called City Hall, which is about government operations in Boston. And it's 4.5 hours long. Wow. The thing about Wiseman, and I think why he wanted to call his movies, what was it?
Something fiction.
Reality fictions instead of cinema verite or whatever, is he didn't buy into the pretense and the bullshit that he was somehow telling the truth, the big capital T truth. He's like, no, when I go to a high school in 1968, and
I'm walking around with a camera.
Everybody reacts differently.
Yeah, obviously.
I'm choosing to put my camera in a certain place, and I'm very much choosing to edit this movie. And I want to tell a narrative story. He did not shy away from wanting to tell narrative stories with his documentaries. High School is this funny but very bleak view of high school life in 1968. Of course, we're in the middle of Vietnam, civil rights movement. The teachers are shown as being not prepared whatsoever with what's happening outside the country. They're kind of controlling. They're kind of mean. They look like assembly line workers treating kids like parts that they're building a car with.
Yeah, it sounds like from hearing you talk about it, it sounds like there's always a generational difference between teachers and the kids they're teaching. But in this case, it's like there's this real cultural transformation too. So teachers that grew up with the sort of respectability politics of the 50s probably are now trying to teach these kids who are like, y'all are sending me to war. There's a draft on, like there's all this racial unrest. There's this whole civil rights movement.
So during the filming of High School, the My Lai massacre occurred, literally while they were filming. Yeah. And then a month after they finished production, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated.
Yeah, wild.
The character of Howie in the movie Eephus is the age of what those teachers would have been like.
Interesting.
So I guess if you call it the Great Generation or the Silent Generation, somewhere in that range. I think what's fascinating to me is watching High School, and yes, it's entertaining. It's like watching all the ingredients come together for how to make a boomer. Like these students are all boomers. And if you play with a timeline of these guys that are in their 40s which is the same age of the South Hill turkeys that showed up to watch Eephus with us. But the characters in Eephus are the age of, they're boomers. They're guys that would have been 18 in 1968.
Yeah.
The great movie reviewer A.A. Dowd from AV Club had this to say about High School, which I think wraps it up pretty good. High School gradually morphs into a quiet depiction of clashing generational values, with the instructors as torchbearers for a general worldview on the wane, and the students as the voices of a new country being born in their image. So this moment I want to play from our movie to tee this up is when Howie's watching the game and he just decides to talk about what he thinks about the fact that they're building a school.
What do they need a school for? I mean, to learn, I guess, but kids learn on the job. I mean, they don't need a school, practical day in and day out kind of thing. Flipping burgers, cooking hot dogs at hot dog stands. I hate this goddamn business.
And you get to see, what does it look like when a boomer was in the lab being created? They were graduating high school in the 60s, and 30 years later, they found themselves, really uneasy about soccer and hating the idea of a school replacing the baseball field where they play.
Here's just one big backyard. My backyard. Till fucking Graham builds that school. And this dugout becomes a art class with fucking easels.
Well, and that's the thing that's got me a little bit in a mood about this third space thing that I'm thinking about so much. It's like things are going to change. I wouldn't have any more power than anybody on that field does about whether this field goes away or not. And I guess the question is, if that baseball, and we've already discussed later, or they've already discussed earlier in the film that nobody's going to drive 2 towns over to go use a different baseball field. This is just going to stop existing, right? It's just, that's the reality. So if these things are going to go away and there is this natural attrition of cultural space or a natural transformation of civic space.
It feels kind of like a parable for what happens when we lose shared histories with one another. And I love that about what Carson Lund is doing by casting Frederick Wiseman as the narrator, by including the actual Bill Spaceman Lee. It's like, we don't remember anymore what happened 10 years ago, let alone what happened in the 1960s or what Bill fucking Spaceman Lee did in the 1975 World Series. Right. But Carson Lund picked Lee for a reason, and not just for interesting filmmaker credibility.
Yeah.
It's I think about this movie, I just want to say this. It's it's tonally nostalgic and hopeful, but it's also very earnest. The radio host, even the ads on the radio show, the players, the umpires, the narrator, the billboards on the outfield walls.
All local.
It's all local, and it's all in intimate conversation with the community. So you don't see any national ads. I don't think there's one reference to any Budweiser or...
Isn't there something about a barking dog's going to scare your kids at Halloween? It's that level of civic journalism or something where it's watch out for...
It starts with a warning by the narrator that there's a coyote on the loose or something.
Yeah. It's
It's got this red team versus blue team thing, but nobody wants to rip one another's throats out. Right.
Yeah.
And they don't buy into, in this fictional setting, the both sides false dichotomies that we're all gagging on every day. The tension between people on opposite sides of this whole red versus blue situation in contemporary culture, right, is the response to that is to like block each other on Facebook.
Right.
It's like, I had this, and this movie doesn't seem to have like an especially cynical view about boomers and wants to kind of like place smelling salts under their noses. Like, remember what this generation was like before they were red pilled and became like Fox devourers, Fox News devourers. Local friend had some disagreements, let's just say politically. At one point we decided we're going to go down, we're going to have some whiskey, and we're just going to shoot the shit.
Yeah.
And we did. And it was awesome. I didn't agree with a single thing that this dude believed about politics, local or national.
Yeah.
He didn't believe in anything that I believed in.
Right.
But you know what we did? We drank whiskeys and we laughed and we said some funny things to each other. Yeah. And at the end of the day, I was like, dude, it's good to see you.
Yeah.
He blocked me 6 months later on Facebook.
Right.
And said that.
And like, did not block you after you guys got whiskey together.
No, exactly.
Yeah, right.
And never would have blocked me as a result of having whiskey together. Yeah. But if we had continued our interactions in person, breaking bread, going to a fucking baseball game, he never would have thought, I'm going to say some trollish shit and then I'm going to block him on Facebook.
Yeah. To me, those two teams were obviously red and blue because the rest of the uniform was white. And that's like, just like baseball is America. And I'm not like advocating for nationalism here, but like our national identity is tied up in those two colors. Right. And that used to be a unifying thing about America. Right. Again, not a big fan of nationalism. I'll just come out and say it. But like, that is one of the galvanizing things about what makes us all American is our Americanness. And now, you know, political parties have chosen to sort of be like, okay, we're the red team and we're the blue team. What you're reflecting on is how much more partisan even colors have gotten since the time of this movie, actually.
It's mostly like, you know, demagogues that I'm referring to in this observation, but I'll just say this. I don't care who it is. If it's a national personality with millions of listeners, followers, subscribers, whatever it is, the death of the third space in American life right now is because those people, I don't care if it's Joe Rogan or Hassan Piker, they're not going to go to a baseball game with you. But you know who will? Your neighbor. Those people will go to a baseball game with you. Yeah. And you should probably ask them to go.
It's funny because, you know, the people talk about like how unhealthy parasocial quote unquote relationships are with like your favorite podcaster or whatever. I've never really believed that just like really liking listening to a podcast is a bad thing, right? That's not the part of the parasociality that is a problem. It's when like that becomes your entire social world is one-way traffic from a streamer or from an influencer or from a podcaster. When you mistake the non-friendship, the parasocial relationship you have with somebody you're never going to meet who lives, you know, 1,000 miles away as being the same as going and grabbing a beer with your neighbor, right?
Let's pull it back to the movie.
Yeah.
There was a moment when one of the people responding to the movie had an observation and a realization, I should say, about what was really happening within the time frame of this movie.
We were 30 minutes into the movie, and I leaned over to Luke and was like, I just realized this whole movie is going to be about this one baseball game.
Yeah. And the passage of time is the clock chiming. And
the bell
how
ringing.
many hours has this been? And then the light changing through the whole thing. And so that also, it was just like, by the time I realized they were going to go to dark, I was like, oh my God, this is like a real baseball game.
Yeah. And they were going to keep playing in the dark,
The movie takes place during a game, and it's like I do think the radio mentions Halloween. So it's like late in the season. This is the end of summer, which means the shadows are getting longer. So for a filmmaker, from a technical perspective, this had to be a micro budget film.
Yeah.
How do you even make this film happen? Because the passage of time is a literal character.
I think they also filmed it like during this time period. If it wasn't in the fall, then it had to have been spring, because
I think so, yeah.
There were minimal continuity goofs that I picked up on watching it the second time, but it would have been mostly like being able to see the people talking to each other. You could see their breath. But then where it gets tricky is the stuff that they shot at magic hour or dusk. And that stuff is stunning. It's some of my favorite footage.
Gorgeous.
And because it becomes very difficult to shoot because you have a limited amount of time. This is what made Terrence Malick very famous. Days of Heaven, his amazing movie from the 1970s. He filmed almost entirely during magic hour, which is like,
Basically,
you have to be
you've got like
nimble
45
and
minutes
ready to go. And some of the best moments from Eephus are shot during magic hour.
Taking all this care to make this continuity work, make time a character in the immediate aspect of the game, but then as a metaphor for, the times in America changing, times in this town changing, it really pays off in the metaphor of the movie, and the audience picked up on that.
There were just all these really stark juxtapositions that created all this tension. It was like there's a light and darkness, and there's noise and silence. There's the old guys and young guys, the nice guys, the angry guys, and it all kind of came together at the end. But also there was like this weird tension of like order and chaos with like the game and the field and the rules, and then outside of it, there's all this noise and the lights and the leaves changing and everything. The time they show like outside the field, it was like there's dogs barking and bells and like car honking and stuff. There's all this noise going on. And then they get back on the field and it's just them talking and playing baseball.
So here's another technical thing, Benji, like sound design, stuff like that. There's some really interesting choices they make when people are sort of like, okay, there's a game happening, the outside world, the noise, the food truck guy, the bells from the church.
I tend to be bad at this. And so I was so appreciative of this observation. I tended to forget how exceptional the sound design and what a character the sound plays in the storytelling. And there's in particular one moment where the character who has mentioned earlier in the movie that everything is a war. I think it's like going to the grocery store. It's a war. Yeah. That same character then ends up in the woods, and this observation from the person at our screening is
just like looking for a baseball, right?
Looking for a baseball, and he starts to hear, and I think it's being conveyed or implied that he was like a Vietnam War vet because he starts to hear choppers, and he's looking around, and he finally sees the kid smoking a cigarette. I just about lost it. It's one of the funniest moments.
Yeah. So basically, he's like having a flashback, so probably some PTSD, which no laughing matter, but it leads to this really funny scene where feels like he must be back in the shit, as they used to say in Vietnam. When I think of helicopters, I think of Vietnam. Like that was the helicopter war.
Yeah, it's very Apocalypse Now. Yeah,
Apocalypse Now, Platoon, all those movies. Like that's how you got in and out of those jungles.
I think they stopped just short of like playing a Ride of the Valkyries or whatever. But
like having one of the characters at the very end go the horror.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And then what's cool is the moment they're back on the baseball field, it does just get super quiet.
Quiet's down.
Where you can hear every single thing. There's a moment where the guy's like standing in the outfield for the longest time. I don't even know the intention behind this scene, but he's just kind of mumbling to himself. And it's so quiet that you can almost hear his inner thoughts. The other thing I really like about this interaction of the generations is the depiction of the skateboarder, like young teenage kids that are totally bored. Is that, I was 17 at the time that this movie depicts. I would have gotten high and watched adult men play baseball for 30 minutes or an hour just to kill time, right?
Yep.
So, the other night, my wife and I go to Comstock Park here in Spokane. It's open swim night and it's beautiful. It's 80 degrees. It's like you can't come up with a more perfect evening. It was only parents and little kids who don't yet have smartphones.
Yeah.
No teenagers. Really, really a bummer. And it feels like something that this movie has something to say about is, teenagers would have an idle moment when they were in 1993 or 95 or whenever this is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Now they'd be like, I'd rather just be like hanging out on our phones. This is so like get off my lawn shit, but
also it's like, I'm not going to stop using social media anytime soon, but I think it would behoove us all to realize like what it's good for and what it's not good for. And one of the things that I think, even when we do go out with our friends, it takes a month to like text back and forth to like get the actual day that's going to work, because our lives are so hyper schedulized.
And every generation's lost in this sauce, by the way. This is not just young people. I would love to pick on the teenagers, but the truth is there's a bunch of adults.
I think it's actually maybe worse for adults. Because like life gets in the way. Oh, we're so busy. I got to go to work the next morning. I got all these responsibilities. Yeah, we have responsibilities. And those responsibilities, I think, are destroying novelty in the same way that I think, the hyper algorithmization of digital life destroys novelty as well.
I started a podcast about local professional soccer. I started this podcast with you where we want to watch movies at the Magic Lantern and then talk about it. And yeah, we might be speaking to an audience outside of Spokane, and I hope we are.
Yeah.
But ultimately, we want to go down to the Magic Lantern. And I also want to hear perspectives from people that aren't just like content creator class, because that's super annoying. And I think there's too much of that. So one of the things you've encouraged me to do through this podcast is to go invite perspectives and these things that people said when we went to the Magic Lantern was unbelievable.
Yeah.
So the project of my soccer podcast and this podcast is that, basically every time we feel anxious or distressed or bored, we pick up a phone and it's like, no, actually,
maybe live in the discomfort. Maybe watch the world around you.
Live in the discomfort. Go down to your local stadium or your local wherever and watch some sports.
And of course, we should say another person who sort of came in with the high heat right at the end, like a closer, a really talented closer. Your wife, Ray, who is a therapist, and of course, the light and dark, as a good therapist would, reminded her of death and change.
I loved your thought. I thought about that too, like the dark and shining light into the darkness and the end of things. And it felt like at the end, it was like, this is a movie about death. Oh, yeah. And it was like
lights flicker out.
But everybody had their own. Someone had to light off fireworks. Someone disappeared into the cornfield. It was just like, this is everyone's relationship to death, and it's okay. It's all how we relate to ending.
So there's a speech at the end, Benji, I want you to talk about, because I didn't realize this was an actual Lou Gehrig speech, but everybody else in the room seemed to. So tell me about Franny, given the last lines at the end of the movie.
The ending of this movie is breathtaking and stunning and also deeply melancholic.
Yeah.
God.
It's weird to
I can't even talk about this Franny character.
Time laughing in a movie, and then at the end you're like a little sad.
Oof.
That's what makes it so much more powerful, and what actually makes the joy a little greater, I think, is like it really sells. Like, God, this was so much fun, and now we know it's over. So
we know it's over, and it's a beautiful sucker punch. This final gesture from Carson Lund and these filmmakers. So the character Franny, who is a guy that you literally just want to reach through the screen and squeeze because he's so cuddly and he's so charming and he's so warm and he's just like everybody knows somebody like
baseball.
that. Yeah, and he's losing this tradition.
Yeah,
and because the final moments of this film that it might be the actual end. So Carson Lund talked about filming a movie about the death of movies, the death of baseball, and this last moment is he gives this kind of the last lines of Lou Gehrig's famous Yankee Stadium speech.
Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
And then Franny walks into the woods like Shoeless Joe Jackson in Field of Dreams, and you kind of know that was his death.
Yeah.
And it's just, dude, I can't even really talk about it. I watched it this morning.
And then to go back to like how much you can only really sell that ending if you've just spent the first or the previous,
that's it,
however many hours enjoying the company of these people.
Yeah.
You get brought into, it's like, wow, we were sitting in a theater watching this. It's almost like that theater would have been the stands, on the third base line. Like we could have been there. It reminds me of a lot of growing up in a rural space, but more than that, it made me feel like I knew this town and these people.
Oh man, I wish I'd have just gone. And then I'm watching
innings,
yeah, and I'm watching the second time. I'm like, I just want this to keep going. My kid, my 11-year-old, was also with me, and she thought that a grown man peeing on a fence at night made her think it was becoming a horror movie. And I have to say, fair enough to my kid. Seeing a grown man peeing outside at night is the stuff of nightmares for most kids.
Yep.
I have one more thing I just want to say about the topic of death. This podcast, before I had seen Eephus, was going to be a podcast about the best ever death soliloquy in the movie Blade Runner. That's part of our intro. And it's because we're also thinking about the movie industry. But I just want to clarify, not movies, okay? Not cinema, the movie industry. Movies like this one or the animated film Flow that I saw last Christmas, and me and my entire family cried when we watched it. They show us that we can avoid getting devoured whole by the AI-built focus grouped hellscape that's on the horizon of movies at the industry level. But don't give up on cinema. Don't give up on being in public shared spaces with your neighbors and your community. Ignore the myth that's being peddled everywhere that we only have enmity for one another because of what's happening on social media. ask your neighbor to go watch a movie.
People have been talking about the death of journalism literally since my first year in journalism. The first big layoffs hit Spokane after I had been on the job for less than a year. I was thinking about this morning. There are no more Tower Records anymore because people don't buy physical media, but that doesn't mean there aren't like, we've got like 3 or 4 boutique record stores in Spokane. So maybe there is no more. And this is tough for film because film is preposterously expensive to make. So it's not the same as like, oh, I can just cut my own little record, or I can, go, buy some paints and an easel and become a painter. There is a sort of an economy of scale, or like,
oh my God, it's a communal art form and it's very costly.
But, as technology gets better, maybe the communal aspect is going to become more and more important. If the money isn't there, then it's going to become about the love.
I just want to really quickly shout out Will Menaker, Amber Frost, the Chapo Trap House people, whoever funds things like Omnes Films productions, you deserve gratitude because it is expensive. Even Eephus was expensive. They used a Sony Cinealta Zeiss Master Anamorphic lenses. Like, this is beautiful, beautiful stuff. Yeah. And it wasn't cheap to make.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, I forgot to give you forgot to give your note about the actors that played the baseball players related to the budget and whatever else of like,
oh yeah. So
the skill level of the baseball players.
I'm probably going to butcher this story, but Carson Lund said something on a podcast that I heard of him talking about how he kind of thought that this might be a higher quality of baseball originally. Like, we might get some people who could actually play. And I think because they might have casted, I think they casted digitally, or remotely. He was finding these people who were like really good for the characters he was imagining. And then he'd be like, so you can play baseball, right?
Oh,
You're good at baseball.
I can totally play baseball.
And in some ways, like, that's the whole movie. So it forces you to sort of take what you got and kind of change what's in your mental picture of whatever you're doing to match the team you have around you, which is really what coaches do too in sports. I couldn't imagine this movie if it would have been with like, even single A professional players.
Oh, I'm so glad it wasn't.
Yeah.
Even down to the level of, I would never nitpick this movie, but I'm just going to laugh at one moment. The character Derek is watching, I think it's the Ed Mortanian character that's played by an actor in his 60s. Okay.
Yeah.
And he's saying something to the effect of, well, he can only throw 75 now. And, he used to be able to throw 78 or something like that.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And I was like, this dude looks like he's throwing 37 miles an hour, nowhere near 70. And meanwhile, I love the part with the skater kids. And one of the kids says, I've been watching this for an hour and I still have no idea how baseball works.
Yeah.
And then the other kid also says he's watching the character Troy, who I think may have been, in fairness, may have been drunk at this time, but it speaks to what you're saying about the cast. Looks perfect, but clearly cannot do anything. He's a very unconvincing athlete.
Yeah.
And he says, I think this guy's the best player. And he swings and he falls down. He's probably drunk, but it's one of the many. There's like these scenes are countless.
Yeah.
There's so many funny moments. All right, let's wrap this up as far as the movie itself goes. Adler's Paint wins 6-5 on a walk-off base on balls. So for me watching this, it wasn't quite, I've seen some walk-off base on balls. It wasn't quite as dramatic as my beloved Braves and Andrew Jones clinching the pennant for the Braves in 1999 against the Mets, or Jim Leyritz for the Yankees beating the Mariners in the 15th inning of their American League Division Series in 1995. But that's how the movie ends. I think it's perfection.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jake Coyle of the Associated Press calls Eephus the best baseball movie since Moneyball. Of course
How could you disagree?
No, of course not. I want to use that to segue into talking about our top 5 baseball movies. Luke, you ready to do it?
Yep.
All right, let's do our top 5.
Yeah.
I will go first.
Go for it.
And it's Moneyball.
Yeah. So is that your number 1 or is that just the first of 5?
I think it's the first of 5 and it's my number 1. I think this movie is perfectly constructed. It's Bennett Miller's best movie. I think Capote's probably right there.
Yeah.
It's Steven Zaillian and Aaron Sorkin working together on a script, and whatever you want to say about either of them, they're fantastic screenwriters. I think Moneyball is like a movie that I'll watch once a year.
Yeah, I definitely don't watch it once a year, but it's. I don't think my list is ordered, but I think it's in my top 5.
So you have Moneyball.
Yeah, Moneyball's in there. Number 2 for me, and this is weird. So these are mostly movies that I watched as a kid, except for Moneyball.
Okay,
I think Sandlot, man.
Yeah, I don't even know if I've seen it.
It's just one of those. It's like the Goonies for me.
My
It's
kids
like,
love it.
It's about baseball, but it's about the adventure. You know, there's a dog, like a huge dog.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, there's just so much nostalgia there. And it ties into the fantasy aspect of things. It's like, not only do we all think we're going to be in the major leagues, we also might think that beyond I think it's the right field fence is, you know, a dog that might as well be a dragon. You know?
Number 2 for me would be The Natural. Between Randy Newman's soundtrack, which is just amazing. The Newman brothers, there's many of them. There's a David, there's a Thomas. Thomas is probably the GOAT.
Thomas is Rand, from like a popular music standpoint, I think Randy's.
Yeah, but I don't get into all those weird songs that he does.
Yeah. But also,
didn't he even do I Love LA like Randy Newman.
Yeah, a little corny, but he also was like in terms of original songwriting, like all the Pixar, like Toy Story. That was
Robert Redford for being so unforgivably handsome and charming that I actually forgive him for being 47 years old when they filmed The Natural, playing the role of a character even when he was 18. Even when I was a kid, I was like, this is a little weird, but he's just so charming and beautiful that I forgave him. All right, give me your number 2.
Again, it's like I saw this one late. So actually, you know what? I'm going to start with this because this was me imagining what it would be like in my grandparents' basement. Grew up in a relatively conservative household, but then when I went to my grandma's house, all bets were off, including watching movies as a child like Major League.
Oh man,
where whatever else happens with Charlie Sheen's ability to control his fastball, what I was really paying attention, and maybe there are some tough, and I've not rewatched this movie, so whatever the racial politics were around the Caribbean player who is like Jobu and Jobu's rum and
up yours, Jobu. And I've seen that movie at least 1,000 times. Yeah. I'm not including it for reasons because I just don't think it gets over my other ones. I think when it comes to baseball, I just play it a little bit down the middle. But my next one would be 8 Men Out. It's my favorite John Sayles movie, one of my favorite John Cusack movies. Yeah. Extremely elegant interpretation of the Black Sox scandal. Makes your heart break for characters like Buck Weaver, played by Cusack, Shoeless Joe Jackson, played by D.B. Sweeney.
I mean, shout out to D.B. Sweeney. Shout out to the actors of a certain age of the 90s. Like, I haven't seen that movie in a million years. I remember liking it. And I remember, like a world where Cusack and D.B. Sweeney are in movies is a world I want to remember.
Exactly. What's your third one?
Yeah, so I actually saw this a little bit later, but Bad News Bears, man. And that was way before my time, but I remember really loving that movie.
That's Mathau, right?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it, I don't think. That's weird, but I haven't seen the remake either.
Neither have I. And then I think, both of our number 5s?
Oh, is Field of Dreams your next one?
I actually don't know. I like Field of Dreams. It's always felt a little.
So we're on 4.
Oh, you're on 4.
Yeah.
I've done 4. So yeah. So I've done we're on your 4th. Yeah. Go for it. So what's your 4th?
So speaking of Shoeless Joe Jackson, he was then played by Ray Liotta as a far more soulful smoke show version of Shoeless Joe Jackson in Field of Dreams. Great 1-2 punch with 8 Men Out. If you want to watch those movies back to back, I think it'd be pretty rewarding.
Yeah.
It's a movie that's like super corny. And it's built, I think, on a premise that is so undeniably fun. Yeah. Even as a grown man, I'm just like, the idea of building a baseball field and a bunch of ghosts from the past. Come on. It's incredible.
It's funny. So I think you might have been too old to appreciate Sandlot at that time in your life. I think when I first watched Field of Dreams, I was pretty young, and I was like, this is just like old man nostalgia stuff.
Yeah,
I didn't get it.
You had a Timothy Busfield kink. You thought, if Timothy Busfield's in this and from 30-something, this must be a shit movie.
Exactly. Yeah,
it's made for my parents. I'm not watching this. One of the true, I think, in Field of Dreams, one of the truly great James Horner soundtracks, alongside his soundtrack for Edward Zwick's Glory. Another amazing Phil Alden Robinson movie, Sneakers, also has a soundtrack by James Horner and Branford Marsalis. Right? We discovered that recently. We talked about that. Yeah. By the way, when we were watching Eephus, I think it was that day that I caught the news that Shoeless Joe Jackson and Pete Rose were made eligible for the Hall of Fame in baseball.
Right. So the lifetime ban from the Hall of Fame, has been over. Or now it's both of them are dead. So
it's crazy.
They can be in the Hall of Fame again.
We both have one more movie left on our top 5 list of all time. Drum roll.
I think it's Eephus.
I think so. For me, it's Eephus, and I don't even think that's recency bias. I looked at lots of baseball movies, and I was like, I think Eephus gets in there, and I've only seen it twice.
Yeah.
And the second time might have been weirdly just as rewarding as the first time for its own reasons. But yeah, it's incredible.
And honestly, I think it's maybe at least the only one on my list that if you want to have thoughts about our current moment, you should watch this movie right now. Maybe I do want to go back and as a man of a certain age, rewatch Field of Dreams to see if the nostalgia it hits me different. But like, I think the only of these now, I guess 8 movies, because we had 2 overlaps. The 8 movies we just got done talking about, Eephus is the one I would watch first.
I worry that if I go back and watch Field of Dreams, some of the scenes in it would just be, they'd hit a little weird, and I might not, the Costner of it all, I don't know.
And I mean, back to the racial dynamics, that's probably why I'm never going to watch Major League again.
Wait, oh yeah. And did you discover, you didn't realize that Abby Hoffman was in Field of Dreams as a little kid?
That was wild to me.
Super funny. All right, there's our top 5. That was a fun gimmick to get through. And let's wrap this thing up. I think, I feel like I should turn my South Hill, as a South Hill turkey, I should turn my South Hill turkey's hat into a rally hat right now and say that, like, for this movie, like the entire project of this podcast, going to the movie theater again, watching movies with people, that is basically the plot of Eephus, participating things together. It has become way too novel. I will say, despite enjoying my second viewing, watching it on my computer kind of sucked.
Yeah, go watch it in the theater.
Dude, I enjoyed it, but it wasn't anywhere near the same experience. I missed the group that I watched it with. I wished I was with those baseball players again. So the sun is setting on the last ever baseball game in the movie Eephus, and this is a movie about death while movies themselves are dying. But I think I'm just going to caveat that and say, it's the industry. It's the Hollywood traditional industry of movies. Let them die. Let's go support the Omnes Films of the world.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's just it. Like, this is a movie about being in space with other humans, and it's a call. You know, the ability to be around people is not to be taken for granted, but it's also something we have to actively do, or these spaces just won't exist anymore.
That's it for this episode of All Those Moments. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever podcasts are served. Check out the other movies from Omnes Films, Christmas Eve and Miller's Point, No Sleep Till, Los Capítulos Perdidos, which means the lost chapters. Thank you, Luke.
Thanks, Benji. This is a lot of fun.
And like that character, Troy, who's laying in the outfield because he just doesn't want to see it go away. His favorite sport on the field that he's played so many games.
Yep.
This is what our friend Ross had to say about his last moments of playing what he called meaningful baseball.
Maybe the reason I still play baseball is because my last high school game, but we were playing at Indian Stadium. We were like down. And I run out to my position. You know, Don Henley, like, After the Boys of Summer Are Gone was playing. And I've never had a more, like, visceral, like, moment in my life where it was like, oh, God. Like, this is over. And I played since I was 5 years old. I'm never going to play in a meaningful baseball game again.
Yeah.
Until now, turkeys.
Yeah, until now, turkeys.